The National Assembly has succeeded in being the democratic tool that gave everyone the opportunity to express and participate in decision-making. And it has succeeded as a legislative institution that has contributed to the journey of development witnessed by the state of Kuwait. With the electoral law promulgated by the Constitution, the state of Kuwait has become a society with an integrated political system. Its establishment of the Kuwaiti National Assembly as a democratic edifice has placed the state of Kuwait on the map of democratic countries.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to KTV2. I'm Ahmed Al-Wasmi. I'd love to welcome you to this special media coverage that will bring you the main updates, news, events, and about the democratic process of the National Assembly election 2023, coming to you from the studios right here in the Ministry. Before we go any longer, and would love to welcome my colleague, Basma Al-Awadi, who will join me today in the coverage this special episode. Basma?
Thank you, Ahmed. And welcome, dear viewers, to our exclusive hour that will shed light on electoral process in Kuwait's 5 constituencies via our reporters who are distributed around the country to keep us updated.
Today, the Kuwaitis woke up to practice their constitutional right of voting the third election since His Highness the Emir, Sheikh Nawaf Al-Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah, may Allah bless and protect him, took office. The National Assembly is Kuwait's legislative authority, and its mandate to observe the work of the executive authorities, issues laws which come into effect after being ratified by His Highness the Emir. According to the General Department for the Election Affairs, 207 potential candidates are competing in the race of the parliamentary elections, including 194 male hopefuls and 13 female, just like you are, candidates. With the voting process for the 17th legislative term of the National Assembly came to an end in Kuwait's 5 electoral constituencies, some 793,646 eligible voters were expected to choose 50 MPs out of the 207 candidates to represent them at the new legislature for the term of 4 years. There are 99,779 voters in the first constituency, with 34 candidates competing. This second constituency has 46 candidates in the race to win the votes of 90,394 people. There are 34 hopefuls in the third constituency, which has 137,978 voters. 48 candidates are competing for the votes of 208,740 people in the fourth constituency, and the fifth constituency includes the 47 rivals and 256,755 eligible voters. According to the Health Ministry, 123 fully equipped clinics operated at polling stations with the participation of 740 medical staff, in addition to 30 ambulances. The ministry's spokesperson, Dr. Abdulrahman Al-Sanad, said that 5 medical clinics operated in the main voting centers, while 118 clinics were at the subcommittee's headquarters. We have the first report, so stick around. That's one looking good as usual, and she's going to give you more details. Stick around, don't go anywhere.
Emir Sheikh Abdullah Salim al-Sabah issued a decree in 1961 to form the Higher Council tasked with organizing Constituent Assembly elections. The law specified candidates had to be 30 years old and well-versed in reading and writing the Arabic language. On the occasion of holding the Constituent Assembly's first session, Sheikh Abdullah Salim gave a speech in which His Highness emphasized the importance of democracy in building a modern state. Currently, the National Assembly's 50 members are elected by their constituents that are divided into 5 electoral districts, in which each electoral constituency elects 10 parliament members. The Cabinet has officially declared June 6 as the date of the National Assembly elections for this year. Setting the stage for the parliamentary elections, the Cabinet adopted several decrees and preparations, such as Decree 147 of 2022, in which the Cabinet decided to suspend work at all government bodies on June 6, declaring it a day off. Government bodies and authorities work in collaboration to ensure fair and inclusive elections, which are pivotal to the quality of the country's governance. The Ministry of Interior affirmed that every Kuwaiti citizen is automatically added to the roster of voters upon reaching 21 years old. Voters must be present, their national certificates and civil identification cards on election day, while those who lost their nationality certificates can obtain temporary certificates from the Passports and Citizenship Affairs General Department. The Cabinet issued a decree of emergency adding new residential areas to the existing 5 electoral districts to allow eligible voters in those areas to participate in the polls, increasing expectations with great momentum in the number of candidates. The voting process started from 8 a.m. and proceeded until 8 p.m. local time, during which Kuwaitis voted to elect 50 members of parliament for the new legislative term from hundreds of candidates running for the elections. The Ministry of Interior designates dozens of schools, according to their respective constituencies, as election centers, while Kuwait Municipality, in coordination with the Ministry of Education, is distributing field teams across the districts to prepare and equip the schools to host voters casting their ballots in the election. After the voting process concludes in the election centers at 8 p.m., the ballot boxes will be closed and taken for the official count, where the process takes several hours as ballot papers are counted manually. The election results will be announced officially on the State of Kuwait's television, as well as radio channels and other media outlets. His Highness the late
Well, we're back, and now let's join our correspondents and reporters from around the Kuwait's 5 constituencies to bring us the latest updates about the electoral process after closing the voting polls. We have live with us Farid Deshti. Good evening.
Good evening, Basma.
Good evening, Farid. Farid, with us from the first electoral constituency. Farid, I would like to ask you, so after the closing of the polling stations and as the counting process is underway, how can you describe the flow of voters throughout the day?
Oh, it was really amazing and smooth. There was no obstacles and no difficulties, no problem whatsoever. Thank goodness everybody was cooperative. The whole people were really, keen to, vote and, go to the polling station. And also, as you mentioned, I'm in Al Shaiji Elementary School in the first constituency. Right now, they closed the door behind me. If you can see, the white door is closed and there is another path for the exiting. And also, I could announce officially now the ballot, casting the ballot is started now in this committee, Basma.
Well, and would you tell us about the efforts exerted by the concerned bodies to secure the voting process in your area?
Absolutely, I could, really salute and a great thanks to our foot soldiers, the officers, and all the police personnel and the Interior Ministry of Interior. I really want to thank them. They were really dedicated 24, the whole day and without even, a notch. And also, I would like to thank the Red Crescent, Kuwaiti Red Crescent, for being volunteers, giving people wheelchairs, and also the fire force, the Ministry of Health, all the ambulances out there. And thank goodness there was not one single situation, any emergency situation. But I will really thank these people, all the governmental bodies, who are responsible for the election national day.
That's wonderful, Farid. Thank you for joining us and thank you for the elaboration. Up next, we have Al-Ajmi, Abdullah Al-Ajmi rather, from the 2nd electoral constituency. Good evening, Abdullah.
Good evening to you, Basma, and to the dear viewers, of course.
So, Abdullah, after the closing of the polling stations and as the counting process is underway, how can you describe the flow of voters throughout the day?
The flow of voters throughout the day was extremely good today, especially in the early hours in the morning and in the afternoon. It slowed down close to the time of closing the ballot. It was a little bit slower, but overall it was a really good flow of voters. And according to personnel from the Ministry of Justice inside the school, they said it was about 70 to 80%.
And how about the efforts exerted by the concerned bodies to secure the voting process in your area?
Yeah, thanks to the efforts of several governmental bodies, including the Ministry of Interior. The Ministry of Interior did a great job in helping out the voters, and then helping out the voters, guiding them to their allocated spaces to vote, and the Ministry of Justice, of course, in organizing and getting the ballots inside the boxes and making sure everything is all right. And the Ministry of Health, of course, they have ambulances ready at the site. They have even clinics at some schools.
Absolutely. Thank you, Abdullah. Thank you very much and for your elaboration. We'll take a break and we'll be back.
Welcome back, and in our studio we would love to welcome once again our frequent guest, Dr. Khalid Al-Janfawi. He's an academic and senior journalist who will talk about in this special hour and to discuss the issues regarding democracy in the state of Kuwait and the political developments. Sir, thank you so much for coming back. Always a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for inviting me.
We all know that the state of Kuwait is going through the wedding of democracy. Everybody is casting their votes, they're choosing their people to represent them in the parliament and to fulfill their needs. Could you tell us about the whole idea about the state of Kuwait wedding the democracy that is going on right this moment?
Well, it is an exceptional historical experience because we are in the only country in the region, at least in our Gulf region, that has almost, let's say, 100 years of democratic practice. In other words, what we witness today is the outcome of decades of political struggle and also the establishment of the state of Kuwait and also the, if you like, the writing of the constitution itself. So in our political experience in Kuwait, we see what we can describe as a constitutional citizenship. In other words, you as a Kuwaiti citizen, you have constitutional responsibilities and constitutional rights. So the elections or voting itself, especially in the elections for the National Assembly, constitutes a moral, constitutional, and also historical responsibility. So it's really a very distinguished cultural and also political experience, especially if you read it within the general context of the historical developments of the Middle East itself. So meaning, in other words, for the last 50 and more years, if you like, we as Kuwaitis maintained this democratic process of elections, which is really a very special experience within our region. And we should always value this constitutional right, meaning the right to vote and the right to be a candidate to the National Assembly. So it's really a remarkable historical and political achievement.
Democracy is a very good thing in life. It's the blood life of the whole human being, and it's being practiced all over the world, and specifically in the state of Kuwait. Do you, from your own perspective, do you see that the Kuwaiti citizens are well aware and knowledgeable about the whole seriousness of this, the process? Nobody is ignoring it, and everybody is participating, everybody is taking part of the whole thing to choose their own people to represent them in the parliament. Do you see this? Do you touch it through the crowds? Do you mingle around them?
Well, of course, the political awareness of the Kuwaiti constituent, meaning the Kuwaiti voter, is very well established. In other words, historically established. In other, the people you see today going to vote have already accumulated an appropriate amount of electoral and also political awareness about their choices. So they have been practicing this, meaning Kuwaitis historically have been practicing this since the early 1960s and even before. So what you see today as a democratic, quote unquote, wedding, if you like, or a democratic historical event happening in Kuwait is the outcome of a very long historical and even constitutional experience. So as a Kuwaiti, the average Kuwaiti, whether a man or a woman or a young person, if you like, have already accumulated enough political and democratic awareness about the candidates, their programs, what do they expect from them, what is the role of the good citizen in Kuwait, meaning how to practice good citizenship. So it's really an overwhelming democratic experience. Yet the management of this constitutional right is part of the Kuwaiti consciousness. In other words, the effectiveness of our democratic elections is part of our general group thinking, let's say.
Mr. Al-Janfawi, please stick around. I'm not done with you because Miss Basma Al-Awadi is right here on the left corner of the studio. She has lots of phone calls. She has lots of coverage. So stick around. She is going to be fun.
We're back with our live coverage, and now we have in the 3rd constituency, Mohammed Al-Harbi live. Good evening, Mohammed.
Yes, I'm at the 3rd constituency, specifically at Nasser Abdul Mohsen Al-Saeed High School in Hatin area. The doors just closed around 20 minutes ago. I have seen so many people coming in to give their vote. The operation was very smooth.
That's amazing. So how do you describe the situation in your constituency after the ballots have been closed?
Yes, the school is actually, the doors are closed, and now they're just taking the boxes and counting everything, just making sure that the Ministry of Interior is in control of everything, and the judges are still there, but the doors are closed, no more voting, and back to you in the studio.
Absolutely. And I'd like to also ask you, would you tell us about the efforts exerted by the concerned bodies to secure the voting process in your area?
Yes, so the Ministry of Interior was guiding the voters inside before closing the doors with the volunteers as well. We have an ambulance and the fire department on standby in case of any emergency. The judges and officials from the Ministry of Justice are inside with the voters and assuring them a smooth operation. So I've seen the voters come in and go out of the school in a matter of minutes, actually. And now after the doors are closed, they're still there, continuing the great work they have done to make this day a success.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mohammed. Thank you. Now we'll be back. We'll take a break and we'll be back.
Basma, thank you so much. That was wonderful. Let's now resume our wonderful conversation with Dr. Al-Janfawi. Dr. Al-Janfawi, once again, welcome back. The state of Kuwait has a very unique situation. It has a written constitution ever since 1962. And within the constitution, the people have the right to vote for people to represent them in the parliament. We call it Majlis al-Ummah. This is kind of a little bit unprecedented in the area because everywhere else they don't have this. They don't have the people to represent them and to vote for them, with exceptional with municipality here and there. Yes. For your own perspective, what do you think? Do you think that this is the pillar of the democracy in the state of Kuwait, and everybody else should do the same thing, or what else? What else do you think about that?
Well, I think let's say having the freedom to vote, or having a written constitution, or even an unwritten constitution, or holding elections either in municipalities or in the parliament is basically a national choice. In other words, the countries in our region, in the Gulf region, have their own different, if you like, historical processes through which they reach, and let's say, certain political achievements. In the case of Kuwait, our experience is very peculiar because we can peculiar in a positive way.
That's a strange term.
Yeah, it's in a positive way. In other words, it's an extraordinary historical experience that can be traced back to the early 20th century.
20th, that's
so
correct.
Meaning the democratic appeal itself has been growing in Kuwait.
They call it a consultative situation between the governor and the people.
Yes.
They always consult together for the best of the state of Kuwait.
Indeed, and
that was back in the 1920s.
Indeed, and of course the whole experience is determined by the national interest of each country.
That's correct.
In other words, we cannot say impose our democratic principles or our
on the others. No.
On the others, they still have the freedom to choose whatever they like to choose in their country. But going back to our democratic experience, we should value this very long and historical and well-established experience, because, as you said earlier, it's a very unique democratic experience in
You better
Kuwait.
believe it,
Yeah,
and we
yeah.
love it.
Yeah.
And we don't want to keep Basma Al-Awadi on the other side, on the corner of the studio, because she has a lot more to give us. Basma Al-Awadi, take it away.
The state of Kuwait has known democracy for over a century, when in 1921 the first consultative council was formed. Since the founding of Kuwait, the people were given the chance to co-run the affairs of the country, thus sustaining the genuine spirit of democracy in the Kuwaiti society. On Shura, the state of Kuwait's long history of consultative governance spearheaded a pioneering democratic experience that was crowned by the 1962 Constitution. Here's the story.
Progress towards democracy in the modern world is typically measured in terms of elections. The chief marker of a transition to democracy is a free and fair election of the legislative and executive branches of government. In this year's election, Kuwait practices a democratic heritage stretching back over a century ago. The origin of the Kuwaiti democratic experience goes back to the late 18th century, when the merchant families of the small fishing and dive pearling town of Kuwait chose a respected member of one of the families, His Highness Sheikh Abu Salman Sabah bin Jaber al-Sabah, as their ruler to handle the daily affairs of the Kuwaiti society in consultation with the community. At the time, it was agreed upon that the rule of the country was established within the firm context of consultation, or shura. This political formula created complete interdependence between the ruler and the ruled, a joint governance. Decades later, initiatives for democratic reform came from the ruler, the merchant families, and the emerging political grouping of younger educated Kuwaitis reaching its peak with the state of Kuwait's independence in 1961. The democratic process was furthered and culminated in the decision to become a constitutional monarchy, an elected legislature, and a constitution within a year. The state of Kuwait succeeded in establishing an unprecedented democratic system in the Arab region, and in comparison to the rest of the GCC countries, Kuwait's practice of democracy is a prominent one and is one of the best and fair experiences of democracy in the Arab world. The Kuwaiti application of democratic life and the sustainability of the culture of popular participation serves as an anchor for the normal growth of democracy, and thus the state of Kuwait is seen as a pillar of stability in the Gulf. A struggle for democracy continued in the subsequent years, but results were different depending on the local and regional circumstances and variables. The 1990-1991 Iraqi invasion and occupation of Kuwait spurred the keenness to fully embrace meaningful popular participation in national politics, and thus the October 1992 general election was the most important in Kuwait's democratic history. It was the clearest evidence of the union between government and citizens, and it revealed the extent to which liberalization and democracy were being embraced by the nation. Now, voter registration is on record high levels, suggesting that Kuwaiti democracy is set to carry on with steadiness and strength. Democracy embedded itself as an aspect of national identity, which Kuwaiti citizens regarded with pride. Now the Kuwaiti democratic experiment appears to have only strengthened and endured.
We're back and we're moving to the 4th constituency now. We have Saad Al-Azmi there. Good evening, Saad.
Good evening to you and to all of KTV2 viewers.
Saad, what are the updates from your electoral constituency?
Yes, I was in 3 schools in the 4th constituency. As you know, this is very dense populated, and the eligible voters for this constituency is high. So we are, I think me and my colleagues, we are aware and eager to see all the changes through social media of the Ministry of Information and also the Ministry of Interior. Because if you go from your house to the voting station, you will be assist through these media outlets. So I can assure you that the process was smooth and successful, thank God. And now we reach the vote count, and it's now 30 minutes. And it will be until, I think, midnight. You will know more than 90% of the candidates who will, inshallah, win and to help our country to prosper and to enter the new development and new Kuwait.
Absolutely. And what were the mechanism and measures set for the voters to facilitate the electoral process?
So I think the voters, when they enter the school, you will the average amount of time you spend there, less than 10 minutes, which is good. You go and you see your letters, you see your name, which is registered in many rooms. So you go, you cast your vote, and it takes less than 10 minutes. And as you know, we are now in June in Kuwait, which is a very hot weather. But the Ministry of Health, they provide ambulances and fire forces for all incidents and accidents. And I can assure you, I didn't see any of that. And if so, I think they did their job perfectly.
Absolutely, Saad. Thank you so much for joining us tonight and for your efforts. Those were our reporters from the electoral constituencies. And now we'll take a break.
Well, folks, thank you for staying around. We would like to remind you that we are still coming to you live with Dr. Al-Janfawi. He's an academic and also a journalist, and he has lots of interest in the state of Kuwait. And before we go any further, I forgot to ask you, did you practice your legislative right? Did you vote?
Yes, indeed. Yeah,
you did?
I did vote this
Where?
morning in Saad Al Abdallah City, which is where I live. So I did that in the morning, and after the casting of the vote itself, as a Kuwaiti citizen, I realized that what I did by voting is something exceptional, meaning it's a freedom that I practice and willingly practice, because I know that my vote, even if it's a single vote, will contribute to the development of my country, culturally, educationally, historically, and even economically. So as a committed Kuwaiti citizen, one needs to fulfill such a basic and let's say an original constitutional right, which I did. I was very happy to do that. I have been doing this process, or the voting and casting the votes, and since I was 21, meaning centuries ago, let's say.
Centuries? No, you're still young and you have your life ahead of you.
Decades ago. So since I got the right to vote, I never stopped voting in all elections, either in the municipality elections or the national parliament.
The transparency and also the fairness is crucial for the state of Kuwait and the whole electoral process. Yeah. What about the tools that should be used to achieve these goals?
Well, hopefully after the end of the elections, meaning the beginning of the legislative, if you like, period, I personally hope that the members of parliament will realize that this particular or the specific election is very, let's say, very important if you read it within the historical context of democracy in Kuwait. So hopefully they will start to focus on fulfilling the demands, meaning the public demands, the issues that most Kuwaiti citizens aspire to achieve, like the restructuring of the population, the increase of, if you like, of welfare, the development of our education, of our health care, and even, if you like, the giving more or producing more, let's say, positive efforts for the sake of our country. We have a deteriorating infrastructure that we need to maintain and renew, if you like. And so when you look at the different, let's say, issues that the Parliament will face in the next few days, it's really very important to underline and emphasize the importance of not wasting time, meaning the members of Parliament, our dear brothers or sisters, hopefully, will realize the significance of what they are doing right now, meaning we lost so much time in belligerent, if you like, political discourse, wasted our time and back and forth, if you like, crises. So we need to stop that. We need to realize that our region, specifically our Gulf region, is developing economically, culturally, industrially, in all aspects of their life. In our case, we should be the pioneers in this. We should
we are.
Yeah, we should. We have been the pioneers, but hopefully we will continue this process of development. The elections, the parliament, this constitution, the whole democratic experience that we have in Kuwait should be a positive, let's say, thing that we should use to develop our country. It should not be, let's say, a tool to waste time or just involve in useless Byzantine, if you like,
argumentative situation.
Yeah,
we don't want that.
Indeed.
We want to avoid that. I want you to relax and drink water because we have a report. As usual, I'm not going to work you so hard. In our next report, the National Assembly is the legislative authority of the state of Kuwait that has a mandate of legislation and oversight on the executive authority's work and implementation of laws. The Assembly is composed of 50 members elected directly by the Universal Suffrage in the accordance with the provisions prescribed by the electoral law. Here are more details about the Kuwaiti National Assembly in the following report.
The National Assembly is a unicameral legislature of Kuwait in which the members are chosen through direct election. The National Assembly is made up of 50 elected members with 10 members representing each of the country's 5 districts, as well as up to 15 appointed government ministers. 50 deputies are elected by popular vote to serve for 4-year terms, while members of the cabinet also sit in the parliament as deputies. There are no official political parties in Kuwait, therefore candidates run as independents. During elections, upon winning, the members usually form informal parliamentary blocs. The National Assembly is a legislature in Kuwait and has the power to remove government ministers from their post, while MPs frequently exercise their constitutional right to interpellate government members. The 3rd chapter of the Constitution of Kuwait, issued in 1962, has described the articles and competencies of the legislative authorities in 3 main areas. 1. Legislative affairs includes bills, decrees, and treaties. 2. Political affairs includes decisions, proposals, questions, interpellations, requests for debate, inquiries, and receiving petitions and complaints from citizens. 3. Financial affairs include the discussions, debates, ratification of public budgets and their annual final accounts, as well as the approved of the Assembly's budget. The Constitution limits the size of the Cabinet to 16. At least one member of the Cabinet must be an elected MP. The Cabinet ministers have the same rights as the elected MPs, with 2 exceptions. They do not participate in the work of the committees, and they cannot vote when an interpellation leads to a no-confidence vote against one of the Cabinet members.
We're back and we have Mohammed Al-Anazi live from the 5th electoral constituency. Good evening, Mohammed.
Good evening, Basma.
Mohammed, can you tell us the updates on your constituency?
Certainly. The ballot boxes have officially closed at 8 p.m. and the votes are now being tallied. The specific school which I am in is Ben Hayyan School in East Ahmedi, which was designated for female voters and witnessed a great turnout, with over 45% of voters casting their votes. And personnel from various governmental bodies are still present, of course, and they have been present since before 8 a.m. when the voting began, as they have exerted tremendous efforts that should really be commended from the Ministry of Interior, the Ministry of Health, and even volunteers from the Kuwait Red Crescent Society. It really has been a great team effort, not just in this 5th constituency, but I'm sure in all the constituencies that participated and the schools that participated in these elections, which went very smoothly and safely for everyone involved. And this is my latest update. Now back to you, Basma.
Absolutely, Mohammed. Thank you for your elaboration. Thank you for everything. And now back to Ahmed.
Basma Al-Awadi, thank you so much. Let's go back to our distinguished guest, Dr. Al-Janfawi. Sir, we were talking about the election and the electoral process and so on and so forth. Let us talk about the electoral mechanism in the state of Kuwait and how do you see it changed through the years? Did it change or not?
Well, historically it changed. Let's say we can trace the development of this electoral mechanism to the back to the 1930s, if you like, during the early, if you like, stages of our democracy. But today, of course, when you look at the different mechanisms that the parliament actually has and that the members of parliament can utilize to, if you like, to suggest laws and so on, so it's very different. So it's an improving, developing process. And of course, the effectiveness of this democratic, let's say, or electoral mechanism needs to be seen when the parliament or the legislative period begins, meaning the effectiveness of this mechanism is proved by how effective are the solutions to the challenges we face in Kuwait, how effective are the improvements that both the government and the parliament contribute to the, say, overcoming, say, the problem of population restructuring or the improvement and development, let's say, of the streets or public infrastructure. So the mechanism itself, if you like, is identified as an effective tool when you see progress on the ground. In other words, if you see results, real actual results that Kuwaitis can see and experience. So if hopefully we don't need to improve that, let's say, legal mechanism in the relationship between the parliament and, let's say, the government, yet we also need to be very creative in our approach to our democracy. In other words, I do recommend to our brothers and sisters in the parliament to assure that their 4-year period, if you like, in the parliament should be positive. They should contribute positively to the in Kuwait. They should add more positive, let's say, feedback. They should monitor the government's, if you like, activities and basically recommend solutions. In other words, they should utilize this mechanism, this democratic mechanism, very positively and effectively, instead of wasting our time and political wrangling and so on. So in other words, hopefully our next parliament will start the mega development projects that we have been promised for decades.
That's correct. Dr. Janfawi, Kuwait different authorities, legislative, executive and legal, and expressing a sincere desire to empower the people of the state of Kuwait to have their final say, enhancing the political cause. How do you see that?
Well, hopefully that...
you are reluctant. What's going on?
No, it's just, I'm trying just to find the appropriate words to underline what I see as a distinguished and an exceptional democratic experience in Kuwait. In other words, hopefully by the end of the day, well, today the actions has already ended. In other words, the voting stopped. But hopefully the outcome will be very positive. In other words, hopefully the people we have elected will remember their constitutional responsibility, constitutional responsibility toward their country and toward us as voters. In other words, it's not being a member of parliament is not just an empowerment of sort, but it's actually a full cultural, moral, constitutional and legal responsibility, meaning hopefully we will have the political awareness of this, meaning us as Kuwaiti citizens and our brothers and sisters in the parliament. So it's really a very fulfilling, if you like, experience to us as Kuwaitis.
Sir, always a pleasure to have you here, honestly. You were with us with the coronation for the King Charles about, 3 months ago, something like that, and we had a good time. The same thing right here, always a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much, and more power to you.
Thank you, Brother Ahmed.
Pleasure to you. Well, this is it. We have to end this one, but this brings us to the end of this hour of covering the Kuwait's national assembly elections. Hoping that you have enjoyed the discussion with our these guests, Dr. Khalid Al-Janfawi, the academic and the senior journalist, and big thanks to my colleagues, Basma Al-Awadi. She's going to say something. Want to say something, Basma Al-Awadi? I guess not. She's kind of busy doing something else, preparing for the other segment. Stick around. We have a lot more right here on KTV2. Stay with us.